Dive into the world of innovation with us as we unravel the challenges, breakthroughs, and latest trends that are shaping our digital landscape. This is Tech Unmuted, your guide to the tech revolution.
Welcome to another episode of Tech Unmuted. You know, Terry, in these, let's just say, fast-paced restaurant industry, right?
Oh, yeah.
Managing multiple communication channels across various locations, right? That could be like a major daunting task, as you well know, right?
I do.
And you know, restaurants really have to ensure that they really have like seamless coordination to provide like the best customer service. But at the same time, they got to worry about streamlining their business. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it, right? And so
it really is. I mean, the whole restaurant, you have to think, especially if it's a quick service restaurant, QSR, which is a franchise. It's a restaurant that has a bunch of locations. If it's something like that, they have to really lay out a plan for each of them to be a template.
Right.
And then if it's a fine dining or a restaurant where it's more of a sit-down, day-to-day restaurant, there you can be a little more unique, but every one of them have unique situations.
It is very challenging. So today's podcast is interesting because we have invited a friend. We have a special guest today. I'm going to bring him on stage right now. And welcome, Jeremy Julian. And so, Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate you guys having me. It's always weird sitting on this side of this side.
I know. And what's great about this is that I had an opportunity to join Jeremy on his podcast, which is the Restaurant Technology Guys, which is a great podcast. And it's very niche focused, and we had a lot of fun, by the way, recording it. Terry, you were not available for that one, but
I was
trust
not.
me, it was a blast, and
awesome.
So that'll be published soon. And now Jeremy gets to come join us. So Jeremy, what I want to do is just if you would just introduce yourself, because you'll do a better job than I will, so our audience can get to know you, and then we'll kick it off.
So Jeremy Julian, Chief Revenue Officer for CBS NorthStar. We sell multi-unit restaurant technology, primarily the point of sale. I also am the award-winning host. I guess Santi told me I got an award before, so I'm allowed to call it an award-winning podcast.
There you
I'm
go.
teasing, but the only restaurant technology-focused podcast in our industry. And you know, if you don't know the restaurants, there's over 700,000 restaurants in the United States alone, not to mention in the world. And so, because of that, it's the second largest employer behind the government. And so, there's lots of people that have been impacted by restaurants, and I'm the only restaurant technology focused podcast. I started about 5 years ago, and 6 years ago, something like that, and continue to get fantastic guests and talk all about restaurant technology.
And it's
awesome.
real grassroots efforts too. Like your podcast was grassroots. I mean, it's you've done a fantastic job.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So listen, I want to do something a little different. This is great because we have two people here. Terry, who is very frontline, right? He's very, very customer engaging. He's always involved from a technical standpoint with some of the most complex deals. And then we have you, Jeremy, who's also very frontline because you guys run a very specific niche in that restaurant industry, which is that POS, that point of sale solution based. So I think we're going to get like super awesome perspectives on the challenges that really this industry faces. And I really want to just start with the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is what? It's the challenges related to, well, multi-location communications. Mm-hmm. It gets tricky, right? So I just want to talk about like some of the difficulties that you guys see with multi-location setups like that. What does disjointed communication cause? What are the pain points with that? Because that could be a problem. And then just share your perspectives on what you're seeing with just that whole multi-location approach to business, and how do we best do it? And Terry, why don't we start with you, because I know you've had some recent wins in the restaurant industry, so maybe you can share some of those challenges.
Absolutely. So the restaurant industry in and of itself, having multi-locations, like I said when we were first doing the introduction, you really have to look at the whole of the restaurant. You can't just look at a site. And a lot of people that aren't in the industry look at it and say, oh, well, it's a location, you just do this, this, and this. But it's not, because you have to find out how are those restaurants communicating back to their corporate
Right.
facilities? How are they communicating with their end users? When COVID hit a few years back, about 4 years ago now, when it hit, the restaurant industry changed considerably. It went from, it used to be when we do a restaurant, the network communication was important, but then the voice communication was just as important because they were taking phone calls in for reservations, for orders, for things like that. If you're a quick service, you're taking orders. If you're a fine dining, you're taking reservations. With COVID, that completely went on its ear. The most important thing was their network. If the phones dropped, most restaurants weren't worried about that because they weren't taking telephone orders anymore. The different food delivery services, the Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, all of the different ones, even the regional ones, they all got into the restaurants and said, hey, look, we've got all these systems. And Jeremy would know the point of sale systems have to tie into those and accept orders from those. And that became their number one priority. So ensuring that those restaurants could communicate network-wise was the most important thing. It went away from being telephony and on to being the communication of the network, because without it, they were losing thousands of dollars every minute that they couldn't hit the internet.
I would say it's almost understated how much COVID impacted the restaurants. I'm a 30-year industry veteran, coming up on 30 years, and don't want to age myself too much, but
I'm a little older than you. I'm over 30.
30 years in this industry, and I don't know that anything changed and accelerated the adoption curve for restaurants more than COVID did. And I know it changed a lot of things in a lot of industries. On that same hand, there's a lot of technology that existed, but people hadn't adopted it. Traditionally, retailers are laggards as far as adoption of tech, whether that's retail, restaurants, grocery. They typically have been that way. They were forced to your point, Terry, they were forced to. They had to do it to stay in business, number one. Number two, it was critical to ensure. Today, our average customer has between 12 and 15 different integration touch points.
Really?
Amazingly, every one of them requires connectivity to the outside world, to the internet. So when your internet is not stable or not configured properly to allow the traffic in and out, or you don't manage it appropriately with quality of service and such, you impact your guest experience and you impact your staff's experience, which ultimately impacts your guest experience. If your staff member is not able to process a credit card, if your staff member is not able to process a third-party delivery, if they're not able to process a gift card, a loyalty card, any of those things, all of those things require internet connectivity in order to function. So if they don't, ultimately it impacts the staff member, which then impacts the guest, which drives the guest to not want to come back in. And that's just a small, very, very tip of the iceberg as to the ways that not only did it change, but how much a properly managed and configured network is going to be crucial to ensuring that you can deliver the service that you're expecting.
Yeah, it's almost like if internet or connectivity used to be kind of like an afterthought, but now it's just essential. Like this is the front of mind, right?
Yeah, you used to be able to do, whether it be a bulk upload at the end of the day, all of your systems were within the actual restaurant. So I'm sure Jeremy can tell you the point of sale systems, it all used to be unified right there inside the restaurant. And it might require the LAN to get back to the kitchen so that they get the ticket to print out and work. But today, that is all cloud hosted. It is all on the internet. And it truly is the credit card machines now, where in the past, credit card machines, that was one of the few things that still required POTS lines, those plain old telephone service for years and years. And today, I would say very seldom do I run into a restaurant or retail that is still using POTS lines for their credit card. It has gone to internet. And without them being able to run a credit card, a cash-only business in this day and age, people don't carry cash. They just don't. I've talked to many people in our industry and outside of it that somebody will need, hey, do you have a whatever to give this person a $5 a tip? And they're like, yeah, I don't carry cash at all.
I never carry cash.
Just have credit cards. And if your restaurant can't process those credit cards and can't hit the internet to place an order for a burger or a shake or whatever it may be that's in your restaurant that you are known for, then you're losing a lot of money, and it's really
Well, I've got two examples that I'd love to walk through with you guys. The first of which happens to be one of my favorite restaurants in town, is favorite Mexican restaurant, and they've been having connectivity problems.
Right.
They've been having connectivity problems, and we're there at least twice a month, if not once a week. Friday night, margarita night for my wife. It's a Mexican restaurant. She enjoys her margaritas, and we kids tease. Friday night margaritas, and we go to the same place. They know us. We walk in, and they happen to have an internet outage. And ultimately, the manager came up and asked if I had cash. I didn't have cash. It was a party of 6 or whatever, 5. So it was an expensive meal. And so they said, well, our internet's out. I'm going to have to use the knuckle buster to get your card number. And I was like, number one, no. Number two, no. Number three, no. I'm not letting you do it. I'm here all the time. If you need to, I'll give you money some other way, but I'm not giving you a knuckle buster. Besides the fact that my card doesn't even have raised card numbers
anymore.
So she was going to write it down, which is in complete disregard for all of the compliance factors. At the end of the day, we were able to figure out an offline transaction. You know, I was able to pay for my meal, no problem there. But it created a pretty bad guest experience for me, number one. Number two, if I had somewhere to go, if I needed to get to the ball game, if I needed to get to a movie, it would have been awful. That's number one. Number two, we've got a large brand that we're working with that, I say large brand, large property, 25 TVs. It's going to be a sports bar. It's going to be a sports bar, 25 TVs, plus voice over IP telephony, plus 12 to 15 handheld wireless devices that are going to be working on the patio. I spend more time talking to the guy that's designing and engineering their network and pulling internet into that building than I do even the restaurant on how much we're going to charge for a Jack and Coke, or how much how the cheeseburger is going to be rung up on the point of sale, because I recognize how critical, if we don't get the amount of bandwidth that we need, because those 25 TVs are all sucking up the bandwidth, or they allow guest Wi-Fi and it's sucking up all the bandwidth, how poorly it's going to represent our product. And so, to your guys' points, making sure that partnership for those transaction engines that are so critical is a really big deal. That's another brand that we're working with. And I had a 90-minute call with their network engineer the other day to design everything that needed to happen. And then I made them document it and get it back to me. So sorry, I'll give that back to you guys. But that is part of what we have to deal with every day.
And you're absolutely right. Yeah. That's the thing that people don't think about is, so you have to make it a redundant network. You have to give them that backup, the business continuity on their network. You do, but at the same time, I don't know about you, but like here at home, I used to have a satellite dish. I used to use one of the satellite providers. I don't anymore. I stream all I have is streaming service. All of the restaurants are going to that as well, because even like the DirecTVs and the Dish and those guys are pushing their streaming services. Yep.
More so even than putting a dish up on the ceiling.
Right. You don't have to have the dish. The weather doesn't affect it anymore. Remember, I've sat in a sports bar watching a ball game and had a storm come up, and then I'm mad because I missed part of the game. Right. That's that user experience that if they can keep their customers happy, they're going to do whatever they have to do that. But that bandwidth that a video stream takes really can overrun your point of sale, which is important. Your point of sale is most important for getting the food to them.
Yeah, and charging them. And charging them, because they can't drive revenue if they don't have the ERP at the middle of the store.
That's right.
To be able to charge for those transactions and get it to the kitchen and create the efficiencies that they need to. And yes, to your guys' point, the internet is so critical. And with 12 to 15 different integration touch points, again, that loyalty membership, that online order, being able to check in, do the reservation. There's so many different ways that it's impactful.
The gaming systems, if you're in a sports bar, they probably have the little video game in the corner for timeouts and halftime.
That's right.
You probably also have the streaming music systems.
Yep.
Nobody has those
jukebox.
Big box in the rack anymore. Yep. Nope. Not anymore. It's all
no more in the rack. And you can control it from your phone, and you're paying money for that. So every one of those is a revenue stream. And for restaurants and retail, those are really, really important. So communication and networking having a redundant SD-WAN type of environment so that you have not just secure redundant access, but secure redundant access that you can control the priority of, that you can say, hey, this, my point of sale is number one, and my loyalty and credit card is in that number one. Telephony has become the bottom, and sports bar, maybe it's TVs are number two. If you're in a fine dining restaurant, maybe that music that's being streamed in on the background is number two, because if it's silent in a restaurant, you notice it. If I'm sitting in a restaurant and we're having a normal communication, a conversation, and I've got just that little bit of music in the background at a fine dining restaurant, that's a comfort noise. That music goes away. I hear the kitchen. I hear the other patrons talking. It's uncomfortable for me. So it's all about making that comfortable for the customers and knowing what you have to prioritize and what you don't, and doing it right.
Yeah, that's all good points. That's fantastic, because these are the things that folks don't think about,
Right.
And I want to pivot here for a minute, because this brings me to, Fusion Connect. It's so hard for us sometimes to explain what we all do, right? Because we do so much, right? And we can't spend an hour on this podcast explaining it now. But Terry, I know there's, we have what we call the full stack. It's just a stack of solutions that we put together to meet specific customer needs. But what are some of the things that, as Fusion Connect, right, we've been able to tie together specifically for the restaurant business that we could highlight here? And then I'd love to hear Jeremy's take on once he hears some of the things we can piece together. What does that mean for him, right?
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, and we've been talking about it the whole time. Everything that I've talked about thus far are things that Fusion Connect can and does. I mean, we have great SD-WAN and redundant network services that we provide to those clients. We've put them together in a repeatable format for the restaurants. And what it is, as I said, every restaurant is unique. So you have to talk to not just the IT person that, hey, I need a redundant connection, I need failover, but you have to talk to the people that run the restaurant and find out, how do you do business? What do you do? What is most important for your revenue? What is most important for your clients? How do you work with your clients? And once you do that, like here at Fusion Connect, we've built out our SD-WAN solutions where we can make them repeatable, or repeatable with tweaks. I have restaurants that say, hey, I'm launching a new standalone restaurant. That's going to be different than a new in a another building, in a strip mall, or in a different type of facility restaurant. And they're going to have different needs. Or I'm launching a new, we have restaurant brands that work with us that they have, hey, I have a quick service brand, I have a mid brand, and I have a fine dining brand. And they have templates with us of each of those that give us a starting point. And we worked with their IT staff for hours and days and days, more than hours, just to go through and make sure that we had designed those appropriately, securely, redundantly, to give them those solutions. And then we do the communication. We have the voice communication as well. But as I said, with restaurants, a lot of that has become secondary. So if I do something like a WebEx or a Teams for manager meetings, for things like that, what they'll do is I've got a major pizza brand that at their corporate, they use Microsoft Teams. And we were able to provide them all of their Teams calling at corporate. And then at each of their locations, they put a team seat for the manager, because they'll do a monthly managers meeting, and they want to do it via video. No more bringing people into the office. Nobody has to drive to that regional office. They go in their office, they bring up the video, they do their manager meeting where they're all together. And then the rest of the house, it's all about the rest of the communication stack.
And CCAS too, right? We've seen an uptick on some CCAS stuff.
We do quite a bit of CCAS with the, we're bringing in queues for people. Hey, if you're, thank you for calling our restaurant. Again, that's more the fine dining, although they do have On the fine dining side, you have things like OpenTable and Resi and the reservation systems there. They do still take the occasional call, and if they get 3 or 4 calls, they don't want to lose any of those, because every call they lose is somebody going to a different restaurant. So, hey, thank you for holding. Give us just a moment. If you'd like to text us, just text this number and we will respond back with your reservation. So it really is giving them all of those different options are all things that Fusion Connect does for our restaurants. Are those things you see needed, Jeremy, all the time?
Every day. And part of why it needs to get front loaded, and that's the part that I guess I want to let our listeners hear, is so many of these things need to get started. It's the foundation of what it is that you're doing. And every day, as the week that we're recording this, I just went to a trade show. Somebody told me there's 70,000 pieces of technology that have been written for the restaurant industry. 70,000 different applications. So with that, every day there's somebody new that's trying to get into your network, to get to your data, and not in a bad way, not in a nefarious way. They're trying to solve problems for people. And so without designing it that way and just throwing it on top of what you already have without engaging somebody like Fusion Connect or somebody that understands your network environment is really, really critical. Because I'm going to share this long term with my audience, I'm going to talk about what SD-WAN is, because I think while
sorry.
No, you're fine. When people listen to it, they're going to be like, what is SD-WAN? SD-WAN is the ability, you guys live in this world, restaurateurs don't know. It's essentially a backup internet connection that is not using the same connection type that you would bring in from the street. Spectrum or AT&T or Verizon. It's a different type of internet connection that automatically fails over when your primary does, or even, I'm sure you guys could talk all day about SD-WAN configurations. But I know that a lot of our audience, when I say SD-WAN, they go, I don't know what that means. Business value, 100% uptime, because your primary and secondary, you've got 2 connections that are using 2 different forms of tech to make sure that you're always connected to the internet. And so, sorry, Terry, I'll let you riff on that for a second. But very, very critical.
Yeah, that is critical. And I forget sometimes, because I've done this so long, I forget not everybody knows what SD-WAN is. And it also, SD-WAN, the other purpose of it is to give that prioritization and to set that class of service so that, like you said earlier, it's most important that that point of sale be able to operate and isn't overrun with the televisions or with the radio. That's got to be your top priority at 99% of your restaurants. So SD-WAN
if you're running in 4G mode or 5G mode, do you want guest Wi-Fi to be turned on?
Exactly.
And you're paying for guest Wi-Fi. The chances are no, you don't. With your standard where you've got unlimited internet access, you're probably fine to. But when you go into backup mode, do you want somebody to be streaming 6 hours of Netflix and you're paying for all of that sitting in your in your dining room? Probably not. But but not done properly, people end up failing, and now it costs them even more money to deliver a service that when they're in backup mode, they probably wouldn't want to. And it ultimately also will impact your guest experience, because all of those different systems are using that internet connectivity. So not configured properly, really, really big deal. Also, you guys keep adding, restaurants keep adding. You've got to make sure that your network team is involved, because it ultimately is going to hurt your guests and your staff members significantly.
It is. And when you build a restaurant, you have to think about how I'm building this building, but at the same time, you have to think about how I'm building this network. How am I building that stable communication platform so that all of my customers can get to me inside and outside the restaurant? I want them to see my menu. I want them to be able to order online, or I want them to be able to make that reservation so that when they come in, they've got a table waiting.
This is so fascinating to me to hear this, because we who live in the industry are thinking about this is like common sense, but it's not, because everybody, right? They're so focused on their specific vertical or what the final output is, which is, well, I need to make burgers, right? You can't make the burgers and get it to the right people and have them come back unless you thought about all this other stuff that makes your restaurant tick. And so I love this conversation. And it triggers a whole other group of solutions and problems that you usually get. It's an afterthought. And you're right. I love what Jeremy said. We have to front load this stuff moving forward. We have to bring it to the forefront.
And we have to think about, and Jeremy, I really appreciate you defining SD-WAN for the audience and it's something I wasn't thinking about, but I like to cook on the side, and that's kind of my release from being technical all day.
Me
but
as well.
if you as well, yeah.
Yes.
So, but if you ask me to go upstairs and from scratch make you a beef Wellington with no recipe and all of the details of it and what temperature I should have the center to, I don't know that. I can look it up and get through it, but I don't know it. I'm not an expert chef. I'm an expert at technical. Jeremy's an expert at technical. And we forget that the people we're talking to are experts at food. They know
and hospitality.
the food.
And hospitality, creating an environment. They don't really give a crap how many bits and bytes the Apple TVs need to have to stream 12 college football games on Saturday morning. They don't care. They don't care how many bits and bytes the music needs to be. They say, I need music, and they don't really care. And the good ones partner with people like you guys to make sure, partner with people like us, partner with people like with you guys that understand how critical that is to ensure that they're going to be able to deliver on that guest experience.
I love talking about this stuff. Like I could talk about this forever, but we can't. We have to. This is why we have our producer behind the scenes poking at us saying, okay, guys, time to wrap it up. No, but this is great. Jeremy, this was awesome. Honestly, Terry and I love hearing perspectives outside of our ecosystem because it just helps us connect so many dots. I hope that some dots are connected for you as well. But what I want to do now is I want people to know how to get a hold of you. So, Jeremy, what's the best way for our audience to find you and connect with you?
On a professional level, very active on LinkedIn, constantly posting on LinkedIn. Jeremy Julian. If you search Jeremy Julian on LinkedIn, the business website is cbsnorthstar.com. That's where we talk about, point of sale and all things restaurant technology. And then my personal blog and podcast is therestauranttechnologyguys.com. And again, you search Restaurant Technology Guys, you'll find me. If you just search my name, quite frankly, you're going to find lots of different articles and blogs and all of that kind of stuff. So love to connect with you. As a friend of mine says, I'm oddly available. Like people send me messages all day, every day, and I get back to them because at one point I was that same person that didn't know anything and would never want somebody to not feel like they could reach out.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Makes sense.
And folks, this brings this podcast to a close. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us. I know Terry and I had a great time.
Yes.
Do not forget to like, subscribe, share, because that way you'll be alerted of our next coming episodes, and you won't miss an episode, right? But folks, until next time, stay curious, stay connected.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thanks for diving into the tech world with us today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss an episode of Tech Unmuted. Stay curious, stay connected.